Okay, I've decided to EOL this Crosley, and what prompted it was I was playing with it and something was obstructing the movement of the turntable platter, so I removed the E-clip, lifted the platter off, and found this inside. Looks like a hot snot stick to me. Now, we could say somebody shoved that under there after the record player was bought, but given how poor the quality control is at Crosley, I feel like this was something that got left in there from the factory. Well, then whenever I tried to put the platter back on, and the way you do that is you hook the belt on the little post here, put it back on where this situates over the motor pulley, and then turn the platter, and then the belt slips off and attaches itself to the motor pulley. Well, it wasn't doing that because it's not oriented properly. I don't know how they got this on in the first place, but I just said enough of this Chinese garbage, and I just started ripping everything apart. Even though the front was screwed on, it was very easy to get off. In fact, the screws really weren't holding it that well. All I had to do was lightly pry on it, and off it came. And by the way, Goodwill has still not responded to me on the missing leg, so I'll know not to order anything from the Goodwill in Texas again. And probably what I should have done before I EOL'd this thing was I filed a dispute with PayPal. Like I said, I didn't pay that much for this, but it's just the principle of the thing. You should include what was advertised, and then when somebody sends you an inquiry about it, you should at least reply to them. So, you know, by them not replying, that just shows that they have basically zero customer service. So I just won't fool with them again. These little speakers are probably 3.5-inch speakers. I can probably use them in something. I think I have a couple of those little cheap Japanese 5-tube radios that need speakers, and these would probably fit in there. Alright, here's the amplifier. As you can see, not much to it. You can also see the lovely Chinese quality control there, capacitors that are not even flushly mounted to the circuit board. And it didn't take a whole lot of effort to separate this case. Heck, I've had 70-year-old record players that were in better shape structurally than this thing apparently is. And this case covering peels off a lot easier than the old stuff too. Right, there it is. Now we take our specially designed black garbage bag that is designed for Chinese hazmat material disposal, and we'll put the remains of the Crosley in this bag, and then it will go out to the curb on trash day. Okay, I saved the Audio Technica cartridge. The stylus was bent, so I just threw it away. And here's what's left of the tone arm, so it'll go in the trash. Also save the counterweight in case we need it for something. Now we got this, well, I guess I'll save this little circuit board in case there's something on it I need. So now we can put this in the bag with all the rest of the sludge. Any need in me keeping this turntable platter? I don't think so. If anybody thinks there's a need in me keeping it, and let me know before next Thursday, and I'll dig it out of the trash bag. But yeah, there's our pile of goodies, such as it is. And I can't get over how small these little wood screws they were using. Can't get over how small those are that were being used to hold these cabinet latches and hinges on for something that big. You would have thought they would have been secured better than that. Heck, I've got little kiddie record players from the 60s that are secured better than this thing was. And I saved the motor. It's apparently still good. We might find a use for it on something. Now the unfortunate thing is even though this cartridge is good, it doesn't have the half-inch mount bracket on it. Now I don't know if I can get one of those separately. If not, the only place this cartridge will be usable will be in a fixed mount tone arm. But we're saving it anyway, because you never know, we might need it for something. These cartridges rarely go bad, but occasionally it does happen, so it'll be good to have it on hand in case I run into a situation with one of them. And this hookup wire is cheap and low quality as it is. I might have a need for it, so sometimes these little bits and pieces of junk will come in handy when trying to fix something. So there you go, the EOL of the Crosley Dansette record player, and it's my understanding the original Dansette models were pretty cheap and nasty for their time too, but I suspect they, even as cheap and nasty as they were back in the 60s, then I suspect they were still better than this hunk of crap. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, what can I do for you?
Hey, this is Josh, American Police Officers Alliance. I just wanted to call out today to remind everyone they're kicking off their new campaign for this year. I'm sure you've heard it's been an awful time for the officers, so they're going to be supporting efforts to elect lawmakers to advocate to fight for those who protect our nation's citizens. If we were to send you out a support envelope in the mail, can the officers count on you to return a one-time donation for the drive?
Sure, I'll send all my bills to y'all, and y'all can pay them for me.
I'm sorry, you were saying?
I said, sure, I'll mail you all of my bills, and y'all can pay them for me.
This call was paid for by the American Police Officers Alliance. Back 855-364-2287.
Does that...
authorized by a candidate or candidates...
Hey, does that mean I can send y'all all my bills, and y'all will pay for them for me?
Deductible for income tax purposes. Thank you for advocating for the officers, and have a great day.
I was really hoping that would be the call about the extended warranty on my car. I was going to try to sign up my 1984 Tonka dump truck. But yeah, whoever that was, which I feel like was a scam, if they bother to send me an envelope, I'll just stuff it full of junk mail and return it to them. Getting about tired of all of these out of area and unknown callers, which 99% of them are scam calls and people wanting donations, which likely translates into a scam, so, you know, might as well have a little fun with them. Alright, now that this is over with, I'm going to attach a radio resurrection video, not a restoration, just enough to get it going, because that's all I really wanted to bother with at the time. But yeah, I need to get back to my old ways of thinking, just leave any of this Crosley garbage alone. But now that that's out of the way, enjoy the resurrection video that follows. Radio TV Phono Nut here, and what we have today is the forerunner of the whole house intercom systems that became popular in the 50s and remained popular for several decades after that. This is an Ansley Paneltone AM tube radio from about 1946 or 1947. This is just a radio only, no intercom, but this was designed to be mounted in the wall of whatever building you had it installed in. And at one time there would have been a metal box to mount in the wall to enclose everything. Unfortunately, I don't have the metal box, but if I ever decide to mount this anywhere, I'm sure one can be fabricated easy enough. Now, this is no slouch. This is no 5-tube AC/DC radio. This is a heavy-duty monster. Big power transformer, big 8-inch speaker. I believe it has a 6-tube chassis with a tuned RF front end. We have a tuning eye tube here. This is a phono input here. And from what I read about these things, they were not cheap when they were new. I think they were in excess of $200. So that was a lot of money for a radio back in the late 1940s. So I'm sure the only people who had these were well-to-do people who could afford them. Now, the person I got this from said it worked 35 years ago whenever they pulled it out of a wall in their home during a remodel, but we know a lot can happen over the period of 35 years, and I'm not counting on it still working today. Here's the rear of the set, and as you can tell, it's no slouch. Like I told you, our bottom chassis contains the power transformer, rectifier tube, and filter capacitor and other supporting components. You can see the big honking electrodynamic speaker there, and up on the top is our actual radio chassis. You can see we have 5 tubes plus the tuning eye plus the rectifier tube, so that's 7 total, and we have a 3-gang tuning condenser, so this ought to be a pretty hot radio once it's done. Now, that little button down there is an interlock switch. It's designed to break the circuit if the radio is removed from the wall for whatever reason, for servicing or whatever. There's what's left of the power cord. The plug's broken, the cord's all brittle and cracked, so that will have to be replaced. Now, we actually have 2 plugs on here, and if you're wondering what that's all about, this one here is the AC input. This one here is the antenna and ground. The plug is broken, but originally this was known as a radio antenna plug, and the prongs were oriented so they couldn't be plugged into a standard AC receptacle. And back then they made a special radio receptacle with the one section of the outlet providing AC power and the other section of the outlet connected to an external antenna and ground system. Now, that type of arrangement would not pass code in today's world, but back in the 30s and 40s that was fairly common. So we need to replace this power cord before we can even think about doing anything. It's all cracked and brittle and shorting out. Okay, I have the rectifier tube removed, and by the way, I did bypass that switch to make it easier to service, and because the terminals on that switch are kind of loose and I don't need anything arcing or shorting out. But before I apply power to check the transformer with the rectifier removed, I want to check between the cathode of the rectifier that goes to the filter capacitor and ground, and let's see what we get. $7.8K. Well, if that's all we're getting, then you can bet this filter capacitor is very leaky. If all I'm getting is a maximum of 8,000 ohms with basically no voltage placed on it. Let's check the second section, see what we get, if the meter will cooperate. Yep, that's not too good. Okay, I'm applying about 30 volts AC input. I have the rectifier removed. Checking from the top end of the center tapped high voltage winding. Have 123.8. And the bottom end of the center tapped high voltage winding, 123.5, so that's within range. I bet this transformer is probably going to be just fine. Alright, we're hitting it at full 120 volts. Top half of the winding, 400 volts. Bottom half of the winding, 400 volts. So this is an 800 volt center tap transformer. That's a stout son of a gun. Wouldn't want to get tangled up with that thing. You may be asking yourself, how do you know the cap is leaky? It could be something downstream that's leaky and giving you that rating. Well, we just disconnected the cap, and now let's see what we get. Let's see, number one, Okay, that cap is pretty much open. See about the second section here. Okay, that's not too terribly bad. Okay, reading from where the second filter capacitor would go on the output side of the speaker field coil / filter choke, I'm reading 7.1K, and I think that's a bit low, so let's trace that down and see where it leads to. Alright, there's the filters in place, 222 microfarads at 450 volts. I've got the schematic in one of the most often needed manuals. I need to bring it down here and look at it closer. But just right offhand, I don't see where that 7K resistance is to ground. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this thing up slowly while I monitor the B+ voltage and see if anything gets hot. It could be that 7K resistance is supposed to be there. So we're going to turn it on and bring it up slowly and monitor our voltage. Alright, we're at about 60 volts. Got a little static coming out of the speaker, and about 100 volts B+. No stations. I didn't really expect any. Alright, I'm up to 90 volts AC input with 283 volts B+ on the cathode. We know our audio output stage is working. Because I hear a little buzz in the speaker when I touch my meter probe to the control grid. Okay, with a full 120 volt line, we have 362 volts B+ at the cathode of the rectifier, so that power supply seems to be very healthy. Okay, this thing is kind of hard to get into, so I'm having to do some of this off camera. We have no plate voltage on the first audio tube, however we have voltage on the screen grid of the audio output tube, which is where the other end of that plate load resistor connects. So the first thing we want to do is check that resistor and see if it's open or way up in value. Alright, I'm reading 3.3 megs and rising, which that definitely isn't right. Okay, I disconnected the coupling capacitor between the 6SQ7 and the 6V6 because apparently its severe leakiness was causing my meter to go berserk, and we're now rechecking that resistor and it's wide open, so that could explain why we're not getting any voltage to the play of the first audio tube. And this coupling capacitor, which is a 0.047, is obviously very leaky. We're up to 3.5 megohms and it's slowly charging. So yeah, that capacitor is very leaky. Okay, I went ahead and replaced the coupling capacitor since I had to unsolder on that terminal anyway, and we know it's bad. I also replaced the grid bias resistor for the output tube. It was way up in value. Now this set uses what appears to be a lot of oddball resistors. Normally you would find a 470K in that application, but this one here, that looks to be I thought it was first yellow, but whenever I turned it around, it's actually green, so 5.2, so 520K. I went ahead and put a 470K up in there. It was up to like 780K. That still wouldn't have kept it, that still won't keep it quiet, but might as well go ahead and get rid of it. Now let's power it up and run the smoke test and see if we have any improvement. Alright, our audio section's working now. Sounds pretty beefy too, but that's about all that's working. We're not getting any stations or no other signs of noise from the speaker. So we need to dig back further I've just got a feeling we're going to find a whole bunch of out of tolerance and open resistors in this thing. Okay, like I said, I had to do some of this off of the camera because it's so dark and hard to get to these points in here. It's kind of hard for me to hold the camera and take voltage measurements at the same time, but I'm not getting any B+ voltage on any of these front end tubes, the RF amplifier, the oscillator and mixer tube, and the IF amplifier tube. All those stages appear to be very hungry for voltage right about now. So we need to look and see where our B+ comes from for those stages and see where we're losing it. Okay, I might be on to something here. While I was looking at the computer, I got on Nostalgia Air and looked up the schematic on there. And the rider schematic is a bit different than the Beatman's schematic here. And that's not uncommon because oftentimes manufacturers change designs up during a production run, and therefore there was more than one schematic. But you might recall whenever I was measuring from the second filter capacitor to ground, I was reading about 7,000 ohms. Well, on this particular schematic in the Beatman's book, there's a 10,000 ohm resistor coming off of that second filter capacitor. But guess what value the resistor is in the rider schematic? Yeah, 7,000 ohms, and it feeds B+ voltage to the front end stages. And if we follow this up here, let's see if it's on this schematic. It comes through pin 4 on this jack, goes up to the phono jack. I think when you plug the phono plug in, it disconnects the B+ to the front end stages. And then it comes around down here, over here. Let's follow the bottom line. And look where it goes, to a 0.05 microfarad bypass capacitor that's connected between the other end of that 7K ohm resistor and ground. So what do you want to bet that capacitor's shorted? It's amazing how sometimes you can have a fault and look at a schematic diagram and find the most likely culprit within a matter of seconds. It's a lot easier doing it that way than trying to trace something out on a hard-to-get-to, jumbled-up chassis like what this is. So let's find that capacitor and see if it's shorted. Alright, here's the big 7K dropping resistor, and I'm on the other side of the resistor that goes to the front end stages of the radio. And what's the meter say? A whopping 0.4 ohms. So yeah, we have a short there. And this looks like our 0.05 microfarad solar sealed tight capacitor. Yep, dead shorted. Let's clip it out. Okay, we have the capacitor disconnected. And look at that, dead shorted. Now when I check from the input into that resistor to ground, we have over 5 megohms. But yeah, I thought 7K seemed a little low whenever I first measured that, but you know, sometimes my thoughts have been wrong, so just wanted to make sure. But yeah, that solar seal tight capacitor, altering a saying that Mr. Carlson says, seal tight to keep the leakage in. Well, in this case, seal tight to keep the short circuit from escaping. Alright, I have a capacitor temporarily tacked in and using our shorted capacitor as a link to ground here. So we're going to flip it on and see what it does. There's a possibility it might pull in a station now. Or there's another possibility that some of these other capacitors could short. Alright, I hear static. Turn that volume down. And WMOX is off the air. My problem here are solving. I don't even know just where to begin. Well, it sounds good.
From that, but you know, I I just didn't just had a bad game, just couldn't get out of the spiral. I tried to make a sweeping judgment, but I'm not going to say that the entire officer was huge distraction. It might have been.
And this tuning eye is just barely showing something. It needs to be replaced, but it's no surprise either.
I think it'll bounce back in a big way.
Okay, let's do a more accurate test using high voltage to test that old filter capacitor. It's a dual 20 microfarad section. I'm on the 20 to 50 range, and I'm getting nothing on the I. Move it down to the 0.1 to 50. Basically nothing. I'm at the bottom end of the scale. Let's check it, see how it checks for leakage. Well, it looks like it's open as far as capacitance goes, which means the ESR is off the charts. And then it's electrically leaky with high voltage applied, because that light should have gone off by now. And it appears section 2 is going to be the same way, no capacitance value. And leakage. So yeah, if we'd let this capacitor in circuit, it would have just drawn too much current and most likely red plated the rectifier. So yeah, 3 main problems that we had to take care of to get this thing to play. Well, actually 4 problems. First, replace the rotten power cord. 2, this dual section filter capacitor was defective. Had we left it in circuit, it would have likely caused that rectifier to red plate, and it would have got hot, and it would have been most unhappy. And we replaced the filter capacitor and discovered that all we had was a little tick from the speaker when I touched the control grid of the audio output tube, but nothing any further back. And we found this 240,000 ohm plate load resistor that supplies plate voltage to the 6SQ7 first audio and detector tube was open. Once we replaced that resistor, we got B+ back to the first audio tube and got our audio circuit functioning. And we also had to replace the coupling capacitor between the plate and the grid of the audio output tube. It was very leaky. And then once we got our audio circuit working, we had this capacitor right here was shorted. This 0.05 microfarad, that's the screen bypass cap for the 6SK7 IF amplifier tube, which is also where the B+ comes in that provides voltage to the whole front end of the radio. But yeah, that capacitor was shorted and killing everything and causing the 7K ohm resistor to get a little bit on the warm side. Now, whenever I was a teenager back in the early to mid 90s, my mentor, who was a retired radio and TV repairman, swore by these solar seal-tight capacitors. He claimed he'd never seen a bad one. And he often used them as replacements in radios he was working on in the 90s and early 2000s before he passed away. Now, in all fairness, I've seen some of these solar capacitors that still checked pretty good considering how old they were, but they're at the age now where they need to go, and it looks like this one has already gotten hot. It probably became leaky first, then overheated, and then just shorted, and that was the end of it. Okay, I have that capacitor tack soldered in here, and really for me to do this right, I'm going to have to dismount this whole receiver chassis from the front panel so I can just get it completely out of here. And that way I can see it better, and I won't have all this other stuff in my way. And that may be what we do one day, but it's not going to happen today. This is more just a resurrection than anything else. And if the 2 resistors I replaced are any indication, I suspect every one of them in here are grossly out of tolerance. And we know all of these capacitors need to go, but at least we're playing somewhat decent right now. And I went ahead and tacked in a new cathode bypass cap for the output tube. There's another such cap for the 6SQ7 cathode, but it's so buried back up in there, I'm not going to try to fool with that. Like I said, this is just to get it to play, and we'll worry about fully restoring this at a later date, possibly a way later date. Okay, I tweaked the IF transformers, and they were pretty close. This dial is off. As you can see, we're at the end, and the pointer should be down here, but that'll be something we work on whenever the time comes to fully restore this.
Can you make this 3?
Friends, the new voice for Southwest Louisiana is Talk Radio 1470.
I love a good disruptor. Still going for the
To get the whole story or schedule a demo. Did you know the arrow in Amazon's logo represents 8?
Film. Precious.
$100 off any full house system and same as cash, 0% financing. Call Connecticut at 656 PURE.
Last water softener you'll ever own. Call 656 PURE. Connecticut.
Meet a successful local CEO right here each week on iHeartRadio's CEOs You Should Know.
Visit drinkcap.org to learn more. This message is brought to you by the American Water Works Association.
A baby's babbling doesn't mean much, but it does. Especially if there's no babbling.
This book is a part of our Quick Read series. It's easy to digest, and Destroy Your Student Loan Debt will quickly teach you how to get
WMOX is
use
back
the
on.
snowball, make more money, and plan for curveballs. If you're new to the baby steps or struggling to pay off...
That's why he doesn't want to do it out loud.
I don't know where that interference is coming from, but if it wasn't for that, I think we could do a whole lot better on this lower end. Here's this cathode bypass cap. It's supposed to be 25. It's reading 75. And on these newer type meters, when they read that high, that's usually indicative that they're very leaky, so it's bad.
Closing in on retirement. The retirement playbook can help you.
But I think once fully restored, this thing will really go to town.
Because you're not happy in your work. And
WDIA.
The ability to use timeshare in writing and in...
I think if you had a good music station that was engineered properly and sounded good, this radio would rival or exceed the sound quality of many newer FM radios.
anti-terrorism measures.
There's a tuning eye. You can see it a little better with the lights off, and you see it opens when we move off of a strong station.
Made and put in place to make 25 favorite information.
The power of information.
Black news here and now.
New Orleans, BIN 1280.
I'm Esther Dillard.
And control, the ability of the government to control and therefore...
Alright, there's WSM putting in an appearance. We always like to get that before we end the video.
Stadium, it's a check.
Harper's Hospital gives you all the information you need to make beneficial decisions. They surround you with support and comfort to enhance your quality of life with dignity. They are ready to take your call. 601-483-4134. Harper's Hospice Care. Families helping families.
Medi-Cal Pharmacy is now Old Town Family Pharmacy. They provide the same personal service. They have the same knowledgeable staff. They're in the same location. They have the same hours, the same phone number. In short, it's the same friendly pharmacy you've trusted for years. The only thing that's changed is the name. Medi-Cal Pharmacy is now Old Town Family Pharmacy at 2000 24th Avenue. We're open 8:30 until 5:30, Monday through Friday, and 8 to 12 noon on Saturday. Call 601-693-0033. That's Old Town Family Pharmacy.
Meridian Cleaners, located on 22nd Avenue, right across the street from the main post office here in downtown Meridian, has hours that are convenient for you. Monday through Friday, 7 to 5:30, and on Saturday, 8:30 to 12:30. That's Meridian Cleaners, downtown Meridian.
Hey, this is CW with CW Geared Electric. I want to thank
Ferdy's, lifting spirits for generations.
This is Meridian's news talk station, AM 1010, WMOX.
Ken Coleman, Ramsey.
Listen to this show one time and you're Hannitized. Sean Hannity is back on the radio.
Our first assault.
Alright, that's about all I got for this one right now.